first question. Can you just give a little bit of background to yourself, what your own story is, and what were the various things in your life that pushed you towards the building and the founding of Algebra?
Well, first of all, thanks, Josh, for having me here. Really appreciate your time and being here, and also it's good to be speaking with you again, and given all the work that we're doing together at the EPA. I guess it's a very important question. What's my personal story, and then how did it lead to algebra? So I was raised in London, in a family with the Middle Eastern roots, and I started my career in finance, and I started in investment banking, in commodities trading. I then moved into the private equity world, but whilst I was doing this, the whole time I was always very closely connected to different parts of the community, different community organizations. I was with a charity called Al Fanar, based in London as well. And, I was always cognizant. I spent a lot of time actually, traveling back to the Middle East as well, and to different parts of the world when I was growing up. So I was always kind of somewhat aware of the developed world versus the developing world, and kind of different communities' needs as well. It was something that perhaps I didn't think about it in the same way that I do today, of course, but it's something that I was, that you experience as you're growing up. So then I went into the private equity world. I spent 6 years doing that, and I was very lucky, kind of in the right time, right place, and investing in a lot of technology companies. And that took me all over the world, from Silicon Valley to the Middle East to Asia, and I spent a lot of time working with some really exceptional people, building some really great companies, some of the big names of today. And I was very lucky to have that experience at a young age. And I was always craving for more. So then I actually started an investment company back in 2017, co-founded it with my co-founder in a company called New World, my first startup actually. And we built that into a investment company that today has 2.5 billion of assets under management. And that took us on lots of different journeys. One was kind of a traditional asset management journey where we were acquiring real estate assets, and that was one part of it. But the other part was where we were investing in companies in countries like Bangladesh, investing into countries like Malaysia, and that really opened our eyes to the opportunity of bridging communities and bridging societies, and seeing how here at home in the UK we have certain needs within certain communities that could still be leveraged into a lot of these emerging markets. And that's how Algebra was actually born. It was born through this personal journey. And I guess I feel that this part of all of my life experiences that I've been through today are just kind of have culminated in the birth of Algebra, if you see where I'm coming from. So that's kind of my personal background. I spent over 10-11 years in the financial services sector across commodities, private equity, technology investing, and a significant chunk of that in my own startup, before starting this company now. But now I feel that this is much more of a kind of social impact driven cause, whilst at the same time something that can be financially beneficial, but also has a big massive social impact at the base of it.
Sure. So in other words, your whole life has been building up towards this moment.
Certainly that's how it feels. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about the Algebra concept and what it's all about and what it will achieve.
Thank you. So when we look at the world today, we have there's this big number of how many unbanked or unserved people there are on the planet. And what's interesting is if you look at the World Bank data, you look at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation data, you see this number of 1.7 billion unbanked people. And what's interesting is if you refine that data a little bit further to look at where mobile phone penetration rates and data infrastructure is conducive to digital finance and the new the new approaches to finance that we have today, you'll find that within the fastest growing economies of the addressable unbanked, I'm calling it the addressable unbanked, which is 1.3 billion people. Once you look at refine the data further, you find that actually 800 million of that population come from the Muslim faith. And what's interesting is at home in the UK, we have a melting pot of different cultures, people coming from Nigerian backgrounds, people coming from Bangladeshi backgrounds, from Indian backgrounds, and so on and so forth. So when you actually ask yourself, what are the needs of the community at home on one side, and then how does that interlink with the needs of extended extended networks into some of these in many cases Commonwealth nations as well. What are the interlinkages there? And algebra really solves that problem. And at home, what's interesting is there is an increasing need for a values-based consumption culture as well, and increasing awareness of ethical finance, of ethical approaches to consumption. And algebra aims to bridge that. And it's interesting that even here in the UK, there are still people that are financially excluded. Maybe it's a relative concept to some extent. It's not as explicit as, or it's not as severe as when you look at certain economies. But it's still crazy to think that in 2021 there are still people that don't have access to products and services that fulfill their needs. And actually, when you look at it in terms of what it is that we want to build at algebra, well, that would allow us to actually build something far more inclusive and far more universal. So rather than just solving a problem that fits one community, we see the opportunity to actually solve a problem that could serve so many other people as well. And that's what algebra is really about.
Okay, well, let's look at that then. Why is it that people of certain faiths or have certain ethical sort of concerns need different kinds of products? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's a very important question. So I think it's important sometimes to kind of look at it kind of from a high level view to have an appreciation for it. And a lot of it is about awareness, and a lot of it is about education as well to some extent. So today there's obviously we all talk about ethical, we all talk about ESG, we all talk about CSR. That's something that we're seeing that become the norm in the world. But I think a lot of people are not aware that to be truly ethical and to be truly ESG, it's very difficult to label that as a facade on something that is such a where there's a huge historic legacy of things that probably need to be unwound and done differently as well. So algebra is about building something from the ground up that is ESG and ethical from the ground up, and I'll explain what that means. That means that when you bank or transact or consume with algebra, that means at no point will your money ever be custodied, will your money ever be lent, will your money ever be invested into anything that is unethical. And that means anything in tobacco, anything with a negative externality on society, things that have a negative environmental impact. So that's what actually Sharia finance is actually about. It's about ensuring that your finances at no point ever touch anything that have a negative externality on society. Now, from a faith-based requirement, there are some additional things, a bit such as gambling, pornography, and alcohol, as well, that are additional requirements to also filter out. So, but generally speaking, most of these, most of the requirements you'll find overlap pretty much, correlate very closely with general ESG kind of requirements. Now, in addition to that, there is another requirement, which is to do with the treatment of interest. And this is the part that confuses a lot of people. It sounds very complicated. In reality, we can actually sometimes just look at it at its kind of base level and appreciate it for what it is. It's to do with the treatment of interest and the treatment of fees in particular, and compound interest in particular is seen as something that could lead people towards a debt burden, or lead people individuals into a path that they might have debts or liabilities that they cannot manage. And part of that is also due to the believe it or not, the lack of understanding around how compound interest works, and the potential negative externalities that can cause from a macro perspective. What I mean by that is how interest based products can also be packaged up and resold back on a whole scale, or in a wholesale manner, in an industrial scale, and lead to things like the subprime mortgage crisis. So sometimes the small decision that we make, can actually have much broader negative externalities, although that doesn't seem obvious at the outset. So that's why in Sharia finance, it's very important that fees are a lot more transparent and are not hidden and are not based off of interests. That means things like fixed fees as opposed to compounding interest. And to put that, to give you an example of that, if you're doing an FX transaction, not hiding the rate of that transaction or the fee for that transaction inside the FX rate, inside the foreign exchange rate, rather say what your fee is and then charge the spot rate, which is the part you're not making money on. So it's small things like that need to be filtered, clarified, transparent, that make the difference on the tail effect of how these of whether you're going to have a positive impact or a negative impact by that decision. And that's what really the requirement is for the vast majority of the world's Muslims, and obviously the vast majority of the Muslims in the UK.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, Zeiad. And I can see, in terms of providing clarity and transparency, I'm sure that could provide a lot of benefit to people beyond those who want to invest and bank on a Sharia compliant basis, I have to say. But moving on, so can you talk about how you're making that sort of principle stand a reality in terms of values, principles, and lifestyle into what algebra is all about, and specifically into the products that you are going to be launching?
Absolutely. So one of the things that's very important for us is to be an organization that doesn't just talk the talk and actually walks the walk. So that means listening a lot to the communities that we are serving. And by the way, as you alluded to, we believe that what we are building doesn't just benefit one community. We believe that it's something that could benefit people generally, and that's what we would hope would be the case. So we're running a lot of focus groups to understand where the gaps are in the community, where people are underserved, to really understand what people's requirements are. And that also involves things like giving back to the community through sports engagement. So we're even at the moment we're doing something we're sponsoring a women's football tournament, for example, to also encourage girls. I'm a father of two, by the way, of two girls, and to encourage girls also into sport and people from more diverse backgrounds into football as well. So that's kind of one example of something that how algebra gives back to the community. Another thing that we're doing is we're really excited about our partnership with the Patchwork Foundation as well, where young people from underrepresented backgrounds are encouraged into leadership roles, and people come from, and Mastercard is a contributor in this area, in terms of people who are leaders in their respective fields come and talk to a group of really impressive young people that just need maybe a broader view on certain leadership skills. And leadership is not something you learn in the classroom. It's something that I think as an education system we could do better, but that's a story for another day. And the other thing is as well, right from I think even the decisions we've made in terms of advisors, investors, management team, right from day one, kind of show what we're about. So Nizamuddin, our chief strategy officer, joined from the Princess Trust very early on as well in the foundational phase of algebra. We have an in-house compliance board as well, which is led by Abdul Qadir Thomas as well, who's from the Oxford Islamic Institute as well. And then we also have Nicholas Seuss, who's the former CEO of Visa Europe and Ingenico Group, who's really helping us on the regulatory side and on the governance side as well. And Amani Kallawi, who's the co-founder of LaunchGood in the US, which is a social impact based crowdfunding site. So really everything that we've done right from the beginning has really been about social impact and about listening and about giving back, even from day one, even before we launch. And we hope that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what it is that we plan to do once we've launched and once we've got our products and services out there as well.
So what do you foresee being the way you will listen to your audience or your market, your customers? I mean, you've done a lot of research to date. How do you see that going forward into post-launch when you're running a service and you've got customers?
So one of the things that we are doing is actually we're developing we're actually developing a app specifically, or a section of the app specifically for feedback as well on how our customers would like to see certain products and services being developed, to understand their needs and what they feel is a priority, because naturally we have a product development timeline, starting with things like accounts, digital accounts, physical and virtual cards, rewards, foreign exchange remittances, but also personal finance products, home purchase plans, and later down the road, insurance and investment products as well. And I think it's important to understand our customers' priorities and what they would like to see in those products and services, and that's being done through direct engagement with individuals and with customers and with focus groups, but also opening up the forum so that it's easy for our customers to communicate with us, whether it's through an app, whether it's through social media, and actually we're out there, we're reachable, and people can speak to us. We're very approachable, and it's amazing the amount of engagement we've already had from people with different ideas, and those ideas have been fed through and tried and tested as well in different focus groups. And we hope to continue to be able to do that, to actually build things that are meaningful and provide products and services that matter, and not just that sound good to us, but actually are required by our customers.
So how do you think your customers will be able to feel that what they do with you at an individual level is making some kind of meaningful difference?
Well, we live in a world today which is increasingly complex, and we all have, I think, all of us have really good intentions, and we all want to do good things, and we all want to ensure that the world that we leave behind to our children and our children's children is hopefully a better world, and that our decisions that we've made during our lifetime have been positive decisions for our children and beyond. And one of the things that I think we can raise awareness on and raise and have a better understanding of is how all of us make different consumption decisions every day, and unknowingly we can make positive consumption decisions which have a positive impact. We can make neutral consumption decisions, and unfortunately, even without intention, we can sometimes make a negative consumption decision. And that could be something as simple as using a plastic bag versus a paper bag when we do our shopping, and how that could potentially have a negative feedback loop as well, or almost a butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
If you're familiar with that. So I think what we're trying to do is create an ecosystem where people can feel safe that the decisions they're making with their finances, these are positive impact decisions. And we're working very closely with a number of different partners. We can't do all of this ourselves. We're working very closely with really tier one leading partners as well, on ensuring that our customers have an understanding of the environmental impact their decisions have, and other, other positive or potentially, potentially negative impacts that maybe their decisions have, and how we can optimize those together. So those are the things that we're looking at as well.
Excellent. Well, Zeiad Idris, founder of Algebra, thank you very much indeed.
Josh, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for having me.